Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to ioRadio with your host, Adam Smith, aka American Scream. Today on the show, we have an impromptu guest that I invited on because of a post that he made on social media where he talked about leaving the cult, finally getting fed up with working in the crypto industry and getting out. So today we're going to talk with him. We're going to find out what his thoughts are, how he got into it, and how he got out of it, and how he feels about the whole industry. So come on along. We'll talk a little bit, and I'll read a little bit more if that'll work for you.
Perfect, man. Let's do it.
Okay. So the post starts with, I worked in the crypto space in both dev and BD roles. BD, would that be business development?
Business development,
Okay.
yeah.
Between 2020 and mid-2024, I've helped launch big projects. I've had 50x, 100x trades. I've been recognized at the club and told by random MFers that they lost 20K on my coin. I told them that if they bought on Uniswap, it's their problem, which you could explain to that a little bit later. I've experienced the conference culture firsthand, how crypto bros fly into places like Paris, Miami, or Denver just to party with the same people, do drugs, and listen to deadmau 5 live for the 69th time. Hell, some of these events even hire girls to make crypto virgins feel like they're finally about to get all the bitches CT implied they get. I'm looking at you, Dubai. Who is CT in that?
Crypto Twitter.
Oh, crypto Twitter. Okay. I've had good times, bad times. I made money. I lost money. However, what I worked on and the space I entered was completely devoid of the purpose and meaning I was expecting when I naively walked into the space in 2020. I thought we were going to change the world. However, the grifters took over and every single founding principle of the space has gone to the wayside. Quote, ultrasound money got replaced with 50x leverage on your daily shitcoin of choice. Decentralization got replaced with 3 bros on a multi-sig. Fighting the system got replaced with crypto bros spinelessly simping for the world's richest man on social media platform that he owns and manipulates on a whim. I've slowly woken up to reality, and now that the cat's out of the bag, I can't even go back to this life. I'd rather kill myself than deploy another shitty token protocol front-end bot contract, or do business development on Telegram, hop on spaces, trade meme coins on leverage, incorporate shell entities, have an NFT PFP, or go on another fucking conference side event. Money isn't everything. The culture consumes you, and the next thing you know, you're staring at a 2-monitor setup with Telegram X, some candlesticks, and VS Code in tiled windows. You're on your 3rd Monster Energy drink of the day, haven't showered, all your friends work in crypto, and you can't relate to normal people anymore. Your entire identity is based around how records on a cryptographic ledger will replace the legacy financial system. It's a cult. The tech has its uses, sure, but this is getting ridiculous. So I'll stop right there. Obviously, you came into this pretty excited, and then you realized it wasn't what you thought. Can you elaborate a little further on that?
Yeah, obviously, I can't dox my actual age, but I was quite young when I entered the space, right? Like, beginning of the pandemic, there's nothing else going on. Like, life's pretty miserable, and you kind of want to believe that there's something that you can do to make the world a better place, like long term, right? And
well, let's back up a bit.
especially,
So you can't. Are you in your 20s, 30s? Can you give us a rough idea?
yeah, I'm in my 20s.
You're still in your 20s.
Yeah.
Okay. And did you have any experience with crypto before you got into it, or did you go to school to study any particular discipline or anything like that?
Yeah, so obviously, I do have a programming background, a CS background, and I didn't really have any exposure to crypto apart from a little bit of trading, before I entered the space full time, but it wasn't really an active thing where it was just I didn't know anything about the space. I wasn't involved in the space. It's just oh yeah, I see a number go up. Let me buy, let me sell, let me turn my Ethereum into I don't know, Tesla shares or whatever, right? It wasn't really I entering the space was different.
Did you have a regular job that wasn't involved in crypto?
No, I was too young, man. My work experience outside of crypto is I don't know, man, working at McDonald's.
So did you did you have what? Did you grow up in a fairly affluent family? I mean, you had money.
Look, like I'd say middle class, middle class, right?
Okay.
And obviously, like family was hit by a financial crisis. A lot of people were. So I mean, that was kind of like what I guess like was the seed psychologically for like an appreciation of what blockchain is trying to do.
Okay. And so you just were online. You were hearing about this. You started to just dabble with crypto. How did you get sucked into it?
So I think it's just a bunch of things that happened. I think like um, must have been 2018 or 2019. Charles Hoskinson did a talk in London University, and I attended, and it was like honestly like back then I didn't know, right? But it felt like a fucking evangelical church type event, right? It wasn't even about the tech. It was just about professing how crypto will change the world, all the cool things Cardano is doing in Ethiopia, random stuff. They got a guy who used to work at like one of the biggest banks in the UK to come on stage, and he also worked at the central bank. He's talking about how the banks are shit and like fractional reserves and quantitative easing are like ruining like the economy for most people, and everyone just started like standing up and giving this guy a standing ovation and shit. And yeah, it's like yeah, like it felt like a cult indoctrination, but that wasn't the moment that I kind of got sucked into crypto. It just kind of like happened slowly, right? And like
But that was like the seed that got
obviously
planted, right?
more or less.
Okay. So
And yeah,
yeah,
like
go ahead.
oh shit. Okay. So yeah, like I mean like I started in 2020 because actually I think like a handful of things happened. Like it was like the Black Thursday event. The price of ETH went down quite a bit, and like at this point, it's like the beginning of the pandemic. There's nothing else going on. Solidity is quite easy to learn, and yeah, I read a little bit about Ethereum, and I thought this is the best time to get in, right? And I started turning the little money that I did have into like ETH and BTC. Started using Twitter to essentially like learn about like what's going on in the crypto space, and actually use that as a conduit to get a job, right? I can't really like say who I worked for and what I did, but I worked for like an actual like VC funded infra company. Worked with them for like yeah, I'd say like slightly less than a year. And then at that point, I kind of graduated into like the actual DeFi space.
So what were you doing when you were initially brought on board for those guys?
Like more so like back end stuff, smart contracts, infrastructure type stuff,
So you were programming in Solidity.
Solidity, TypeScript, JavaScript.
And so you can't tell us really who it was, but it was a fairly large firm. This is one of the firms that was showing up at all the conventions and stuff like that.
I'd say well, like at the time they weren't as large as they are now, but yeah, like this firm grew. Um, Indeed, like yeah, like obviously this whole infrastructure industry wasn't as big in 2020. The team was a lot smaller, but yeah, more or less.
So when did you begin to realize that what they were pitching and what they were delivering were slightly different?
Like you have to like basically like you have to fast forward a long time for that to happen, right? Because what happened was that like I went through this whole like kind of like got slingshot into almost like an elite position in this DeFi space after I left my job, and then like that's kind of like when things started to change a little bit. I'd say it's a long story, and I'm gonna have to figure out how to anonymize all the details as well.
Yeah, this is the problem. I've interviewed a couple of people that have gone through what you've gone through, and it's hard to get a good foundation when they're so cautious about wanting to not reveal who they were working with. And I guess this is because most of these entities are still out there, still pulling the same stuff.
Yeah. I'd say like it's one of those. I'm not really worried about reprisals per se, but at the same time, like yeah, like this could leak into my real life, right? The amount of like people that I know that work in crypto, and I mean it's one of those like if I'm telling you about certain people, like those people fuck me over, or they might not be the most ethical actors in the space. But at the same time, like yeah, in general, like in crypto, like, and me and my friends were talking about this. Even when we know there's like wrongdoing or like kind of like anything, right? We don't dox. A lot of people in the space are
Right.
anonymous or pseudonymous, and like only known like their actual identity is only known like to a handful of people. So yeah, you have to be careful not to
Oh yeah, I'm well aware
accidentally
of that.
dox. Yeah.
I mean, I get death threats at least weekly, most of which I don't take seriously, but there are some of them that I do take seriously, you know? So I know exactly where you're coming from. I've actually been swatted before. So to the point where the local law enforcement knows if they get a call with my address. So yeah, this is an odd industry to be poking the hornet's nest in.
Hmm.
But of course, the problem is it's really hard to expose what's going on if you don't try to get specific. So yeah, this is I think one of the reasons why it goes on for so long. There's a lot of people that have gotten burned that are afraid to go out and talk about it. But I appreciate
Yeah,
everybody that
exactly. Yeah.
does. So let's see how specific we can get without you feeling uncomfortable. So when you were in the middle of this, what kind of stuff were you doing? You in your post, you talk about going to these conventions, running into people in clubs. I guess you can't talk about any particular project that you did. Were these like little pump and dumps? Were they side projects? Little shit coins.
Dude, it's a mixture of, I mean, there is like some of that and also like longer term projects. Like some are like very legit, like one or two of those projects are very legitimate projects that launched, did unbelievably well. And like I'm talking projects that like nearly exceeded 1 billion market cap. Um, and that was insane. And actually, I sacrificed a lot of allocation in these kinds of projects because I wanted to walk away from them for like various reasons. Um, but yeah, like just yeah. So some projects are like insanely huge in terms of like the amount of kind of connecting that went in the back to kind of like create that pump, and also like even like yeah like the way the teams were organized was really well organized, and then on the other hand you have like some projects which are like the complete opposite, right? Like quick riffs, and I've done everything in between, to be honest.
Well, can you talk us through like a typical prototype project? You don't have to get specific, but you could say we launched this, and here's how we went about it, and here's what happened to it.
Yeah, I think it depends on like which era you kind of like. If you want to talk about like how projects work right now, I can tell you about like exactly how most of these projects work right now.
Well, if you want to break it down into different types, I know now there's these pump fun things where anybody can create their own shitcoin and pump it and dump it in seconds. And then there's more elaborate stuff where you've got venture capitalists on board and they're extracting value on the initial token launch and stuff like that. Just pick something that you can explain to us, give us a little bit of inside information on how it went down.
Yeah, so without being specific, I can tell you like the one ultimate grift is what you just described, right? So typically it'd be like a brand new chain launching. So in most cases, these are Ethereum virtual machine, EVM, L2s, rollups, whatever, right? Like either they're kind of like linked to Ethereum mainnet through like a whole rollup and dispute settlement, or they're Cosmosm chains or whatever, right? So you have
So
these
let
brand
me
new chains
qualify that
launching.
though. So you're talking about basically a bridge, a smart contract that connects to Ethereum's main blockchain that maybe creates an additional another token that is mapped to.
Yeah. So basically, like, I mean, I can give you names of like a handful of these really big projects, which are effectively like EVM chains, right? That kind of like have this composability built into them, either through linking to the Cosmos ecosystem or linking directly to Ethereum mainnet through some kind of like roll up or like bridge.
But the objective is
Like you have
always
like
to mint your own token, right? And that's where the payoff comes for the people that are launching the project, right? They create some pseudo utility that is tied to an existing blockchain like Bitcoin or Ethereum, and they create a bridge, and they have their own token that's associated with that service, right? And that's what gets pumped.
Yeah, exactly. So that's typically what it is, right? So you would have on many layers, you have the chain itself, which is launching, and this chain would receive a lot of funding from VCs for like various reasons. It might be that they're offering kind of plugs into other meta grifts, or like, I mean, you can call them like industry points, like Ethereum restaking or like whatever, right? Like
Right.
or zero knowledge kind of like proofs. So whatever. Then like these projects like raise like maybe 10, 20, 30, even 50. Some of these chains have raised like hundreds of millions.
Now, when they raise this
And
money, in what form does it come? Is this getting a whale to buy a bunch of these fake tokens, and then you use that
yeah, but
liquidity?
it's through typically like for these kinds of like projects, it's through SATs, right? So uh, I believe that stands for Secure Agreement for Future Tokens, um, which is like a safe but for tokens. And these typically come with a vesting period, a cliff, everything that you'd expect with regular like safe equity, but with tokens instead, right?
And this is all controlled
Um,
by smart contracts.
no, dude, no, like, like, man, I mean, it should be. In some cases, it actually is, but in other cases, I'm not going to mention names. It's just literally devs using multi-sender to send out tokens every quarter. So yeah, I mean, it's not really as decentralized or pure as it could be.
I gotcha. Okay, so yeah,
Yeah.
walk us through
So
this and try to do it, an ELI 5 thing. So I don't assume everybody listening knows all the inner details of smart contracts and bridges and chains and stuff. So
okay.
obviously, when the
So
project like this launches, you have to get people to buy into it. So you have to have a little bit more of a layman's pitch, right?
yeah, absolutely. So what I'll do is I'll give you like a full run through of a kind of like new EVM chain, how it would pitch itself and how it would launch, and a protocol that would launch on that chain, and how both of them kind of like basically monetize what they're doing. So, okay, let's say we're beginning with a chain, right? And it's typically someone who's like well connected in the space or Silicon Valley or something like that. And they pitch how they're going to use this particular backend fucking Byzantine fault tolerance, proof of stake, delegated proof of stake, whatever algo combined with this particular technology or whatever to create the ultimate smart contract blockchain. It might be a niche blockchain for gaming or finance or like intellectual property or whatever, right? Or it could just be like a huge meme, like I don't know, Chain, for example, or yeah, like I could name dozens of chains like this, and they raise money, right? They raise money from VCs, literally from a napkin pitch, and they start development, and they basically use. I mean, they have a dev team, obviously, but a lot of it's like going towards marketing, and they kind of build up the hype. They bring in the developers. They have the developer relations. They try and kind of like yeah, like create this whole like pipeline so that they can basically turn to a black hole of money once they actually launch, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they will have their own token, And obviously, the investors which bought in, they didn't buy equity in a business. They bought these tokens through a SAFT, right? Skipping all of the building stages, right? They might do another round when they're close to launch or when they're creating more hype. Even before launch, they'll be running all manner of like public outreach, right?
So let's talk about this.
On Twitter.
When you say launch, you're not necessarily meaning the launch of this service that they're pitching, but the launch of the availability of buying and selling the tokens.
No, so I mean, it depends, right? So in some cases, the token might launch before the chain launches. In some cases, the chain will launch, then the token will launch. And you're seeing more of the latter nowadays, actually. And I'll kind of get into like a bit of that as well. Like before,
I think the last guy that I
like
talked to, he talked a lot about how they would launch the tokens and sometimes the projects would never materialize.
Oh, that does happen a lot. That is very, very common. And like like for like chains and a lot of like these kind of like L2s or smart contract chains trying to compete with Ethereum. That was very common in like the last two cycles. Nowadays, especially given like how easy it is to actually launch a chain, more so what happens is the chain actually launches before the coin, which is something I guess I can get into as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the chain launches, the coin's out there. There's a lot of hype. And what percentage do you think of the investment is spent on marketing versus, say, development?
Well, it has to be the majority, right? Like honestly, like think about it, right? Even if you overinflate dev salaries, and I know dev salaries got overinflated because what happened was that like I was getting paid like six figures, less than 200. But I know people that are getting paid like more than 200, even 300, because they just fully plugged into the grift to an extent which I couldn't. Right? At this point, I was getting jaded.
Were they coming to you though? Were they coming to you and saying, "We want it to do this, but psst, on the back end, we need this and this"?
Basic, like give me a context. Like, what do you mean by this?
Well, like we want this to be like it's a DAO and it's supposed to be consensus based, but by the way, we're gonna allocate tokens in this way, so we still have control, even though everybody thinks it's democratic. Or we want to have the ability to lock the transactions anytime we want if we need to, so that if something happens, you can blacklist addresses, all that kind of shady stuff, to where the whole notion of something being decentralized and outside of any central entity's control is more of an illusion than anything else.
Well, okay, so I can tell you at the token level, this does happen, right? On the token level, I have been asked to create blacklists and pausable transactions. And like you go to Open Zeppelin and all the libraries for smart contracts on Ethereum, which is like probably one of the most like fleshed out, like kind of like open source smart contract. You see that like a lot, right? Like pausable smart contracts, pausable tokens, like random stuff which you wouldn't expect if you're talking about decentralized and fair finance.
Right.
But does this happen?
People are not even, nobody's auditing this code, right? They're just all assuming. Everybody's assuming since it's open source, somebody's looked at it. But
no. Like actually, I have experience like working with auditors, and like there actually is a lot of effort that goes into auditing like good projects code base, right? So like smart contracts will get audited by like what you would call like they have like various tiers of these firms, right? So you'd have certain like top tier firms, and then you have shit firms. Like, I guess I don't want to like call out firms in particular, but I guess like you have like Certic at like the bottom, right? Like in tech rate and absolute joke audits. And then you have like much better auditing firms at the top, like Halborn, for example.
Yeah, I didn't mean to get you off track, but we've also seen examples of these top tier firms that have audited stuff that has been hacked. That's definitely been something that's happened before. But go on about what happens. So the project gets launched. How does it end up failing?
Well,
or does it not fail?
The bubble. Well, so let's kind of like summarize, like speed run this story, and I'll tell you like how it fails,
Okay.
right? So yeah, basically like you either have the token. Let's say like the token launches after the chain is live, because I was just talking to a friend about this actually,
Mm-hmm.
and you have a situation where people are basically airdrop farming. They're using this brand new chain, and like basically because of all their VC connections, the people that run the chain have convinced new projects to come onto the chain and kind of like get easy access to VC funding and the stuff that they need to essentially bootstrap and launch. And these new projects would typically be like crap, right? Like I'm talking basically forks of existing open source decentralized exchanges, forks of like lending protocols, like various things. Like,
Just
but it's usually
copycats.
these kinds of
Just
things.
like how
Co-
the crypto gaming is basically just copy of traditional gaming that's a little bit less sophisticated, right? But with
exactly,
tokens in it.
exactly.
So
Yeah,
basically,
exactly. Right, and
every
then
crypto project, you create a chain. It's a bridge to a new market that you're saying is basically a copy of existing markets, but it's using your proprietary chain. So everybody is trying to kind of get everybody to move over to their ecosystem, and therefore give their tokens more value, right?
exactly, and then like essentially like what happens is that you have like new DeFi protocols launching on these chains, and how do they kind of like attract like new capital into their protocols? How do they get TVL, total value locked, which would be AUM in TradFi, assets under management? How would they get that?
And that's
What
basically
they do is
people
they create.
that are staking their crypto, right? They're tying their crypto up, and that's giving liquidity to the chain.
Exactly right. So it's they're like giving Ethereum, Bitcoin, USDC, USDT, DAI, whatever, to these protocols.
So this is where everybody
And
that thinks staking, oh, I'm getting 8%, I'm getting 25%. It's all of these little mini projects that are trying to attract people to tie their crypto up over there. So it's just they're just basically
yeah,
leveraging everything more and more and more. And it seems to me that what more emphasis is put on the marketing than creating an actual product that in the end will be useful to make the system successful, right?
but like in the past, you could argue there was a lot of effort put into the tech, especially like when the tech didn't exist and the tech was being made. You could say that actually was a lot of effort put into the tech. Now, now there's nothing, man. There's no innovation. Nothing's happening.
Well,
It's
can
just
you give us
forks,
an example
copy
of
and
this
paste.
ethical tech that give us an example of that?
I mean, look, like Uniswap V3, for example. Like okay, I don't know like how much you and your viewers know about like your listeners know about kind of like the evolution of AMMs, right? Automated like marketplaces of for coins, right? Automated market maker. Essentially, it means that you can buy and sell the coin without it going through an order book, without having to literally find a buyer or a seller for what you're trying to
Okay, so what we're
kind
talking
of
about
give.
here is all of these are utilities that only have utility inside of the crypto ecosystem, right? They're not. This is one of my beefs about asking about use cases for crypto. We have this ultimate crypto question, which is name something that blockchain is uniquely good at that isn't solving a problem that blockchain itself creates. All of these little leveraging systems and buying and transactional systems, they only work in that tiny little ecosystem. So they're solving a problem that blockchain created. I'm wondering
Well,
if
like
there's
no,
anything
no.
outside of that.
Okay, like I'll give you okay, kind of going on this whole Uniswap example, right? Like Uniswap V3 was a huge innovation. And honestly, like it wasn't even a lot of work for it to be created, right? Like the Uniswap team is very small. I think like when Uniswap made this, the team size was less than 10, right? Uniswap is the like original decentralized exchange
Right.
using
But
smart
again,
contracts to enable trading.
it's only useful within the crypto ecosystem. It has no real value outside of that.
Well, like I'd
It
say
allows you to
that
create your own shitcoin and deploy it and allow transactions within that ecosystem. But that doesn't help your average person.
My counterpoint is that, like, actually, I made this counterpoint inside my threads. Well, like someone asked me some questions, I responded. Like, actually, this tech would be great for making regulated finance better, right? Like, but it doesn't work like that. Obviously.
That's a claim without any actual evidence, though.
Unfortunately, like, it's like a chicken and egg problem, right? Like, the legacy financial system works a certain way, even though you could literally say, look, right? Like, you look at how Aave and Compound, and I mean, those are the two biggest lending markets on, like, in DeFi across all chains, to my knowledge, right? Like,
but stop right there. Lending in the crypto space is different from lending in the traditional finance space. And this is one of those pet peeves that I have, where people misappropriate traditional terms and they mean something different in the crypto world. In the crypto world, you often have to have more crypto to borrow crypto. You have to have more collateral than actually the amount you need, and it all has to be tied up in liquid. And you're lending it primarily to fund leverage speculation. You're not necessarily creating something that's useful in the real world. And this is the problem. In the real world, when a bank lends money, it creates jobs. It allows people to buy a vehicle that can improve their productivity, or a house. It contributes positively to the society.
Okay, this might dox me a little bit, but I bought my house using like an on-chain lending protocol. Like, market was doing quite well. I borrowed US dollars against Ethereum,
right,
to buy the house.
And how much? Like, but how much USD did you borrow versus how much USD value in Ethereum you had to tie up? I mean, it was probably at least 200%, right?
Yeah, CTV was 250%.
And see, in the real world, you'd never do that. You'd never have to have a bank account. And we're talking liquidity here. We're not talking about an asset like a house as collateral.
Yeah, well, basically, okay, it's like a handful of things, right? So firstly, billionaires are using very similar facilities to kind of like borrow against their, like, equity. Obviously, this kind of like system only works when you have kind of like capital that's publicly tradable, right? Like stocks in publicly listed companies could be used in this kind of system if, like, it existed, right, for regular people. It does exist,
but it doesn't exist for your average person to be able to.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like, for me and people that I know, like, for like mid 6-figure people, 7-figure, 8-figure people, it would be great to have these facilities more easily available. But it's not going to do anything for your average Joe, right? It's not going to do anything for your average person. But yeah, like, you could do it, right? And the only reason
someone think of the millionaires.
Yeah, and the only reason that the CTV needs to be so high on like Ethereum, for example,
it's because the market is incredibly volatile. We know that. We know
exactly, right? So if you were doing it with S&P 500 ETFs as collateral, you could reduce the CTV a lot. You could reduce it all the way to maybe 110%. It wouldn't need to be 200%.
But see, in the real world, for people that do loans, there'll be a lien on that property. Like, if I have a piece of property and I want to use it as collateral, the bank will put a lien on that property, and that I can't do anything with that property. It kind of ties it up, but I still own it, and I can still create value from it through renting it or using it. In the world of crypto, your crypto is, quote, liquidity. So you're using liquidity to get liquidity. It just is. It's not the same kind of value creation or economic stimulation in the real world, even though the terminology is the same. I understand what you guys are doing, but it bothers me that it's misleading, because this leveraging in the world of DeFi is not really creating any kind of economic stimulation in the real world. At least you have to agree that. Now, you may have been able to buy a house, but there was definitely some kind of intermediate there exchange that took the risk of giving you USD, but they also tied up your crypto. But you can bet that the moment your crypto dropped below a certain level, they were going to liquidate the whole thing, which is not something that happens in traditional finance, right? If the value of my house drops below the collateral value I got the loan for, that's the bank's fault. It's not, my house doesn't immediately get sold.
Yeah, well, obviously, like the whole liquidation thing is mainly because like that's the only way to keep like these decentralized systems solvent, right?
Because
like,
nobody trusts anybody, right? And that's
yeah.
But I'm also saying, aside, I understand why they do it the way they do. It's the only way to really do it. But also, the end result of why you're loaning money in the crypto space is different. You may be an exception where you actually converted it into fiat and actually bought some physical property, and that's cool. But I assume that there was a reasonable interest rate that was also being charged. Do you think you'd have done better if you'd have just sold it rather than? I guess it depends on whether the crypto goes up, right? That's the whole point. You expect the price of crypto to continue to go up, and it's going to rise at a rate that's higher than the interest rate they're charging, right?
Yeah, well, arguably, if I did sell, I would have done better, right? Because I did end up getting liquidated, and a lot of people I know ended up getting liquidated, and yeah, it was.
Well, thank you for admitting that, because I rarely talk to people that it's always a success story whenever they're dabbling with DeFi, but obviously the law of averages says that's not the case.
I mean, yeah, it's a success story, and it's a missed opportunity, right? Like, obviously, I'm doing a lot better than I would be otherwise, but I did get liquidated, and I've been liquidated several times, and yeah, like.
So that might have helped change your attitude about the space.
At the time, not really, because like we all got liquidated and we were all together and we were all talking to each other every day, working with each other, and yeah, we just found the whole getting liquidated thing kind of funny at the time. We were like, shit, like, well, let me just check the chart. I might be getting liquidated.
So how much did you lose? What percentage over the principal that you borrowed did you lose when you got liquidated? When they liquidate, they pay off the loan and they give you the difference, right?
Yeah, basically, right.
Or do they just sell enough? They just keep selling until they get their loan back, and then you have a balance of your crypto?
Yeah. Basically, they sell to keep your like LTV below like the threshold, or the CTV above the threshold. LTV is loan to value, and CTV is collateral to value. So basically, they sell enough just to make it so that you're above the liquidation threshold, and then the price goes down again. You get liquidated again and again and again. So like, yeah, you could basically get liquidated like 10 times while you sleep, and then wake up, and then there's, oh shit, all the money's gone.
Oh, what a lovely way to live. And the other elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about is the fact that none of these platforms really have any transparency or regulatory oversight, right? So these exchanges that are setting the market price, which determines whether you get liquidated or not, their order books are not transparent. There's no SEC that's looking over where their trading activity is coming from. So we see a lot of weird things in the market where suddenly the price will go up or down. And our general consensus, being the cynics that we are, is that the exchange needed to liquidate some positions people had. And they just made the price go up or down depending upon what leverage positions they were trying to wipe out.
Yeah, obviously, kind of like even from like the time of like Robinhood and GameStop, like I don't trust kind of like leverage positions on any kind of centralized exchange, period, right? So I haven't used any kind of like Bybit, Binance, Perps, or anything like that. Like,
but at least I'm not saying that the traditional exchanges aren't caught manipulating the market too, but there's a tremendously more oversight and transparency, and they have special licenses that give the SEC and FINRA the ability to go in there and look and see what's happening. I don't believe there's anything like that with Coinbase or Kraken or Binance. There's nobody that can walk in and say, let's see where your trades came from today. They publish that information, but they publish what they want people to know. We don't know if that's organic trades or it's bots. And that to me seems extra scary if you're using market price for these kind of DeFi plays. That seems even more dangerous than in traditional finance. Would you agree?
Yeah, so obviously, it's the Oracle problem, and typically oracles are like reliable source their data from like multiple sources, right? A mixture of decentralized exchange sources, like I don't know, for Ethereum price, it would be like the ETH USDC pair on Uniswap itself. But then it'll also be looking at Binance, Coinbase, Kraken, other competing exchanges like Radium on Solana, which also have like Ethereum, whatever, right? Like, and it's kind of using that to build a composite picture. But obviously, it's just the way capital moves, right? There's obviously going to be a lot more trade volume on Coinbase because of Coinbase Institutional and kind of like Binance, which doesn't even have a fucking headquarters anymore.
Right.
If most of capital is being traded there, effectively what's happening on the smaller exchanges is arbitrage plays, right? So it's like, yeah, it's like, I don't know, Jupiter's gravity affecting the Earth or some shit.
So let's talk a little bit about. So you were in the circles, the inner sanctum of a lot of these crypto operators. You were traveling around to conventions in different places like Dubai, and can you talk about what it was like to go to these events? You kind of implied that it's like a small group of people that end up in the same spot, and there's Deadmau 5 there playing, and in the case of Dubai, I guess they've hired ladies to hang around to make everybody feel like they're desirable or something.
Yeah, like yeah, the space is quite strange in some ways, and I have friends who like organize events like crypto events, right? So like I have a lot of experience kind of like going to these events or even like being around for like the setup. These events have a lot of money put into them, right? These conferences, like. So let's say you have a conference like ETHCC in like Paris, usually Paris, or you have like Solana Breakpoint. And Solana Breakpoint's been like a lot of different places. It's been like in Singapore, Lisbon, I think Dubai as well. You have Token 2049, like all these conferences, right? They have daytime events where you have real talks going on and real people talking about like various kinds of tech relating to crypto. Some of it, which is actually like very interesting and has applications outside of crypto. Most of it, not so, right? Most of it just like internal circle jerking. And yeah, like you have like the day events where people actually pay money to get tickets to go to the conference, but then most of the actual networking and kind of like value generation is created inside events, which happen in the evenings.
The parties,
or like
right?
even like you have parties, exactly. There you go, man. And like everyone's trying to get into the right party, right? Like I even had a situation where like I sold someone a party ticket, but then I pulled up to the party before the person I sold it to did. I literally double spent the fucking ticket, and we both got into the party. That's a funny story. But yeah, literally.
What, the tickets weren't on blockchain? Or they were?
Dude. Yeah, no, the tech is not being used, actually. I'm going to be honest with you. Yeah, like even the people that fucking.
So what's the ratio of men to women in the scene in your experience?
It's not that great. Obviously, like a lot more could be done to include women in tech in general. But the problem is compounded in crypto, where like the girls that do enter the space, like to succeed, they obviously have to come in with a very different mindset. They're
right.
Yeah, like it's not like in regular tech, like women are devs. They work for a company. That's good, right? Like that. But then like here in crypto, like you have like like girls basically using their sexual assets to kind of like boost their careers.
Right. And they realize that they're minorities, so they get a lot more attention, and they can take advantage of that.
They do.
And let's face it, I mean, everything in crypto is all about marketing and getting attention, right? So you'd think there would be more, but I argue I think women generally have more empathy than men, just because of their physiology. They're the nurturers and the caretakers of children. And higher levels of empathy allow you to recognize that what you might be doing is hurting others. And so that's why I think a lot of women are less interested in this. Plus, it's just so hard to explain where the value is. And
I think also like for like men, right? Like there is a social expectation that you can like do well, right? And that might kind of like drive you to do things that you might not want to do otherwise. Like I remember there was like it was a big deal, end of like the 2021, 2022 cycle, where someone dumped a lot of tokens, like on like an open decentralized exchange, right? It was such a big deal that it even made it to Yahoo Finance, that this one guy's $10 million transaction. And he said he did it because he wanted to secure generational wealth for his family, right? You know what I'm trying to say? Like
mm-hmm.
this is insane.
Right.
Yeah.
So is there a particular crypto bro archetype that you've identified?
That is tough. I mean, like it's not like a walking stereotype, but there's some things that I have noticed which are very common in the space. Like at least among like certain demographics, right? Like you have like some people are the more intellectual type, like going to raves and like they're in the space because maybe they still genuinely believe or because it pays well. A lot of people have become like quite very dysfunctional because of the space, right? You're talking about like very young people that like have coding knowledge, like software engineering skills,
mm-hmm.
And like often might not be from like, look, in the United States, you guys have opportunities. You guys can go to Silicon Valley, like people in Europe, people in Asia, people in South America, like don't really have the same opportunities, right? You have young people, they enter crypto. It's in many cases they're in their late teens, and it's their first real job. And then like when lockdown ended, you like go like start getting to all these conference events. Everyone's doing drugs.
By the way, what kind of drugs are they doing typically? Did you see that 2C stuff?
Oh, 2C. Yeah, 2C. Yeah, 2C. But more so just cocaine, man. Like, yeah, cocaine, 100%. And ketamine. To a lesser extent, MDMA, 2C, actual meth. I mean, everyone's doing ADHD medication, which is like Adderall. Adderall is amphetamine, speed.
So you think it's pretty much a standard? Is more people doing it than not doing it?
Yeah, exactly. And everyone smokes weed even outside of crypto. So, yeah.
So let me read what you wrote here. You said, the entire space is centered around a class of people looking to extract as much value out of society as they possibly can, and that's excluding the outright scammers. I have seen how little people in the space regard those who are less fortunate than them. They feel like they are the in-group and everyone else are NPCs. No, seriously, some bros genuinely believe normies are NPCs like simulated agents. They go to obscure digital nomad tax havens, live in a bubble, refuse to learn the language, contribute nothing to the local economy, drive up prices, and then they have the audacity to bitch about the locals. These guys worship Elon and Donald Trump because they think it'll make number go up. Or maybe they fell for MAGA because it appeals to their dislike of normies and the marginalized. Ironically, the same people we were supposed to help with our fancy decentralized ledger technology. You want to comment any more on that?
Yeah, look, maybe maybe what I said was a little bit harsh, but like I'm telling you, it's a genuine thing that I've seen.
Oh,
right?
Well, I've certainly seen it. You know, I've been editing those Bitcoin conventions, and over the years, I've poured through all of the footage, and it's getting more and more divisive and adversarial and right-wingy, authoritarian. It's very, very creepy, how the sociopathy in these people is just floating to the surface and now being illuminated and celebrated.
Yeah, exactly right. Like if you take a political compass test or like the Specker test or like any of these like multi-axis like political ideology tests, there's two axes. There's like left, which is complete collective ownership of everything. There's right, which is like pure capitalism. And then there's authoritarian and libertarian, which is libertarian supposed to mean like it's free. Everyone's kind of like, there is no authority over our heads, right? And like for some reason, I mean, it's probably because like there is kind of like a correlation between left political parties and market regulation,
Right.
and right-wing political parties and like low taxes, right? People have kind of like got this shit confused, and now it's literally turned to like a worship of borderline fascism.
Well, if you know,
Just because,
if you go too extreme in any particular direction, if you go to fascism, you get Hitler. You know, if you go in the opposite direction, you have no personal private property rights or anything. If you go too much in the direction of libertarianism, you get the tragedy of the commons, where it just starts to gravitate towards fascism anyway, as people just consume more than their share of resources. I think if you just got to look at history and see which societies have lasted and in the most healthy way, and see what elements work about that society and which ones don't. I see the crypto ecosystem as being very, very libertarian. Started out very libertarian, which was already crossed over into the unrealistic area of libertarianism, where let's just deregulate everything and see what happens. We know what happens there. It's not going to be good. But now they've gravitated towards the authoritarian area. Is that part of what may have burst your bubble? When did you start to see the whole industry as not being what you thought it was?
Yeah, like I think that is a good question, because I don't know when I cracked. I think it was just like slowly something that just happened, right?
There wasn't a particular moment or anything, because you write, a technological movement designed to liberate the masses from unfettered crony capitalism has been usurped. Its believers have gone from being creators of positive change to literal vassals of the United States techno-fascist oligarchy backed by the KGB. By the way, I like your writing. I think it's very interesting.
Yeah, thank you, man. Like I had some good English teachers in school. I think I got accused of being ChatGPT like a couple of times in the comment section. Okay, so I'm thinking about this, and it's definitely my breaking point was definitely after Elon's acquisition of Twitter. Definitely after that point. Actually, I can't remember when was the day he let the sync in, like physically walked in with the sync. I think that would be like a good starting point for me to mentally like think about this. I thought that was hilarious at the time, but obviously I've undergone like a lot of social development since then, right? Like obviously, I'm still relatively young, right? Like I'm definitely a lot younger than you, for example. But yeah, like I'd say like I was quite immature back then compared to what I am now.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to say dumb things like my pronouns are these nuts.
Right.
And everyone used to find that shit funny. Like I used to be an actual moron. But yes, definitely like 2023 into 2024. I definitely was, by the end of 2023, already thinking about leaving the space. But I just couldn't find a good enough like opening in another industry. And that's kind of like what drove me to stay in the space. I can't really talk about like how exactly I left the space and why, but in terms of actually what went down. But in terms of my kind of feelings towards the space, I'd say definitely like this year, like something cracked in me, and I realized you kind of like look at like all these new chains which are launching and the products which launch on them and how they raise, and you realize it's a formula. There is a formula, and it's not even about kind of like the product anymore or the users of the product or anything. It's about a formula. New chain launching, kind of like through the whole process we kind of discussed earlier, like vaguely, right? New chain launching, chain has some kind of incentives program. It might be that they have like points for a future airdrop. It might be that they're giving away the token that they have there and then to kind of like people that kind of create value, or the users which like deposit capital onto the chain. And so a new protocol comes up, they fork existing protocol, and they raise tons of money really, really quickly. They have a dev team of maybe maximum 5 devs. They have a marketing budget, which is huge. They have a whole network of KOLs. They've raised more than $1 million. They launch really quickly with a really scrappy product. And then they make promises to improve the product in the future, which usually do not materialize. And they launch their coin there and then, and the price of the coin goes up and people are getting the coin. And then, like, in order to get more of the coin, you have to stake.
And then that's when the dev team crashes out, right? Or the VCs.
Dev team slow rugs, as in they'll slowly move on to new projects. The token, if you want to get yield on the token once you've got the token, they make you lock it up for 16 weeks, and they call that vote escrow. But in reality, it's you locking your tokens for 4 months. So
automated hodl mode.
Yeah, exactly. And you kind of just wake up and realize what the fuck is going on, and that's just like this is so far removed.
So when these projects go through their phases, right? Who comes out? So you've got the development team, you've got the suppliers that they hire, marketers and this and that, and then you have the investors. Who makes out the best in these deals through their whole evolution?
Well,
obviously, it seems to me the crypto and mainstream media are always winning, right? Because they get all this ad revenue, no matter what, whether the project succeeds or fails. And this to me is why, for example, I can't get any traction on my documentary, because it talks about the whole industry instead of a particular dumpster fire. And every media outlet out there doesn't want to say the whole industry is crap, because they're all getting paid from them. So you've got, as you said, the marketing budget is probably the biggest budget. So they're all making out like bandits. The dev team has obviously got paid, or they wouldn't have even done anything. What about the investors? Are they always getting out with more money, or what? We know that the people that buy in when the thing launches, they are the ones that end up losing. But
yeah, so there's a whole branch of accountancy, if you can call it that, right? Like you'd say it's accountancy, but it was kind of created by Gen Z people who have no real accountancy or finance experience, called tokenomics, and it's essentially how quickly we distribute the coin, and how we encourage people to lock up the coin, how we create markets for the coin, do market making, utility for the coin. And well, it kind of if the tokenomics are bad, the investors do end up getting fucked, because let's say there's tons of inflation on the token and the vesting period is too long, and people realize there's something better out there for them to invest in, so they dump this token and buy the next token. Investors could walk out at a loss, but given the amount that these tokens pump, even investors walk out with a huge.
So usually they're all coming out ahead too.
Well, obviously, it's VC, right? Most projects that the VCs invest in don't take off, but the ones that do really take off. So on average, the VCs are coming out on top.
How typically do the VCs get their return? Now, I know in the traditional market, your venture capitalists will usually get their return when either the company is sold or it goes public. But in the world of crypto, you can pay off the VCs before you have a minimum viable product. And that's that's what seems to be revolutionary about the crypto industry, is that you can actually make money investing in something that never sees the light of day or never becomes successful. And I'm wondering, where is at a particular point in the lifespan of the project? What do you call that when do the VCs, while everybody else's liquidity is locked up for a certain amount of time, is it the VCs that can sell their tokens at that time, and that's how they get paid back?
Well, yeah, effectively, right? Like, obviously, this is the thing
And
about
that's
like
not that's
the
usually not
way.
mentioned, right? When you're talking about the project publicly, that oh, by the way, you guys are going to buy in. You're going to be, there's going to be this period where your liquidity is going to be locked because we want to make everything stable. Meanwhile, our VCs are all selling all their tokens.
Well, yeah, that is literally what the fuck is happening, right? And even like employees of like a DAO, if you can call it a DAO.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, specifically, like it's a couple guys on the multi-sig. Um, like you'll be talking about holding the coin, you'll be telling everyone, hold the coin, we're gonna like become like really big. And like you check the chain. People are dumping the coin, people are receiving their salaries and dumping the coin,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like yeah, it's very hypocritical what happens in this space.
So you've seen this happen over and over and over, and you got out. So you have a job now that's not in the crypto industry.
No comment. No comment
Oh,
about like my
are
new
you still in
life.
the crypto industry?
Uh, Not really. No, it's just yeah. Like I feel like the more I say, the more I dox myself.
Let's just say on your resume, does it mention that you did any crypto work?
I want there to be a point in time where I don't need to put my crypto work in my resume in order to like have it look impressive, if that makes sense.
Right. We have a lot of people in our community who are HR people at companies, and they flat out say, as soon as I see somebody work for a crypto, that's it. They go to the file 13.
Yeah, it is a huge, and it's part of the reason why like a lot of us have been like dragged back into the space, right? It's literally like
The easy money, right?
it's yes, it's like it's not just that. It's like also imagine someone has like some kind of agriculture degree or something, right? And they could be like setting up like really efficient farms or some shit. I don't actually know anything about farming, but instead they fucking worked as a ganja farmer, right? Fucking growing weed, like, and that was all they did. Like it would be hard for them to like get a legit job, which like had that level of like salary and eliteness, because like there's a black hole on the resume, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's effectively like where I've been, right? And then like all the opportunities that you have are very tangential to like your work in crypto, right? So, for example, for people trying to leave, I'd say you might have opportunities in venture capital, some like legacy finance, like jobs you might be able to actually like weasel your way in, right? And also AI. And yeah, like in general, like some like online work relating to like kind of like backend systems, web development, like whatever, right? Like generic tech stuff where they might not care about um, what you worked on, but more so the skill set you have, right? But yeah, like it is tough. Like it's kind of yeah, it's very difficult to escape. It's like yeah, it's bad.
So, you've said that you still think that there's some potential, there's some good blockchain projects. Can you elaborate on that, or am I wrong about that?
Wait, okay, it's kind of like a bit of both, right? I feel like the one thing that like blockchain has been good at is well the way that people came together to create financial infrastructure from scratch, from the ground up.
So
In theory,
conceptually,
it
you
is
like this kind of grassroots creation of a market.
yeah. Well, like look, if you get rid of how terrible wallet UX has been and continues to be, and just look at the way that you have smart contract composability, token standards, like various kind of like systems for like trading intents and the technology. Like if regular fintech had this, if open banking APIs were this easy, or look, it doesn't need to be like completely unregulated, right? It's not even about the fact that it's
I mean,
unregulated
give us
or
a
the fact that
practical
it's
example of what you're talking about. What is it? What is it in the crypto world that traditional banking doesn't have?
like even the way like these lending protocols work or the way tokens work, um, everything's very standardized. And it means that like if you wanted to create a product which kind of plugged into existing infrastructure, you could do that very easily from a technical perspective. Whilst if you were trying to do that from a regular open banking standpoint, it's very like difficult, right?
But there's specific reasons for that. It's not the limitation of the technology; it's policy, right? You can't just have an open pipeline into your bank account because there's anti-money laundering, anti-sanctions things. There's reasons for that, just like there's consumer protections that are the reason why in certain cases cross-border payments and things like that might have slight delays. It's because of policy. It's not technology. And that policy exists because that's really what people want. I know that people in the crypto space don't seem to understand that. But a lot of people don't mind a payment being delayed for a day or two, is knowing that they have protections if it turns out to be fraudulent, they can charge it back or something like that.
Yeah, and like I understand that, and like that actually, like that is actually something that's very useful to regular people, right? And I know a lot of people who've been scammed in crypto that even work in crypto, so ordinary people are kind of hopeless. But it kind of feels that it's just the whole approach to building standards that is really like innovative in crypto, right? Even for let's say regulated securities on Ethereum, there is an ERC for that. There is actually a code base that you can like inherit that is like in theory you could use it to build a legally compliant coin for a security. Mm-hmm. And like these building blocks and the way that's all kind of like created, if you, let's say, wanted to issue call options, it would be very easy for you to kind of like do that. Like, let's say,
I get completely what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things where idealistically it sounds great. And I'll give you a good analogy to why I think it may sound good in theory, but in practicality it doesn't work that way, right? So you have this crypto ecosystem where you have all these BIPs and EIPs and standards and RFCs where you can plug everything into everything else, and it gives everybody the ability to create their own little protocols. Well, let's compare that to the internet. The internet is a very similar kind of network that was set up initially around that same process. There were RFCs that said if anybody can set up a mail server, anybody can set up a news server, anybody can set up a web server. They can create their own protocols, they can add their own additional services, and they can still do that today. But what we've seen with how the internet evolved over time is when it first came out, it did explode into this beautiful decentralized ecosystem of hundreds and thousands of different internet service providers and different people running different services. And there was Gopher, and there was Usenet, and there was HTTP, and there was FTP, and all these services and different systems. But what we saw over time is as soon as it became somewhat lucrative to play in this market, you had big players coming in and where they started creating walled gardens. And I'm seeing the same thing happen in the crypto space that's happened to the internet. And it's not, I don't think it's specific to crypto. I just think it's specific to commerce, right? Once you create a system, no matter how horizontal and open it is to everybody being able to contribute, as soon as it starts to become lucrative, you're going to see special interests that are going to try to consolidate as much of that power and revenue into their own hands. Whereas, 10, 15 years ago, everybody had their own website. Now everybody has their own Facebook page. They're all consolidated into these corporate walled gardens. Same thing with crypto. Whereas Satoshi's vision was everybody transferring stuff individually in a decentralized array of miners spread all around the place. We now have a handful of mining consortiums that control the vast majority of blockchain. We have a half dozen exchanges that control 99% of all of the trades. It's become centralized. Now, can you technologically solve that problem? I don't know if you can. I don't think that's a problem that technology can solve.
Yeah, so I can tell you like all about decentralization from like a dev perspective, and also like from like projects I've worked on, what even kind of VCs and teams from chains and
So you agree?
everyone.
You see what's
Like,
happening, right?
and it's encouraged actually.
Yeah.
Like,
So
like,
you,
like,
yeah.
like you look.
Let me read what you wrote here. You said something is really wrong, and it's not just in crypto. If this shit doesn't end, the techno fascists are going to win, and will burn all of the world's energy resources on mining rigs and GPU instances and AWS running slop LLMs that run 24/7, replying to other LLMs, drowning out all human internet activity. They're going to play their little games with each other, and most of us will be left on the side, fucked in an overpolluted hellscape. So I guess we're certainly seeing that happen. The internet has turned into this overpolluted hellscape of private interests that are trying to control what the narrative is. The technology is there, right? The technology is there to allow every single person to have their information systems decentralized, but it's not happening. And saying that crypto is going to democratize finance is as much of an illusion as saying that the internet is going to democratize information. What we've actually seen is it's caused information to be monopolized, right? And that's not a technology thing. That's a human nature policy thing, right? This is one of the things that I struggle with throughout the entire time that I do this podcast talking with different people. We all agree on the problems for the most part. We all recognize there's a lot of problems socially, but can they be solved technologically? And I'm seeing more and more evidence that that's not the case.
Well, okay, so this is actually such a difficult topic to get into, right? Like, I think it's because the majority of people aren't capable of decentralizing these systems, right? Either through they're not able to socially organize, or they just don't have the technical skills, or they don't have the understanding of what's possible, right?
But I think that's a cop out. Now, see, because I came from old school. I'm much older. When I started getting into computers, there was no GUIs or UIs. You got a prompt. Every computer came with a book on here's how to program, and so your average user actually did know how to write at least rudimentary software. I think because of the explosion now in capitalism and all of that, people are removed from that, but they don't have to be if they don't want to be, right? I mean, you obviously agree.
Yeah, well, I mean, you raise a really valid point about the degradation of computer skills in terms of people that can code versus the amount of people that actually use computers. And you kind of the worst example of this is take a laptop from 10 years ago and try to open Chrome. It just won't run. I mean, it'll run. It's the exact same laptop running Windows 7 and an old version of Ubuntu, whatever, right? The moment you try and load a modern website, laptop just crashes. Why is this? Because there's so much bloat, right? In every single layer of technology, bloat has taken over because of effectively devs copying out, right? It would be easier it's easier to make less efficient code that ships rather than make good quality code. And everywhere in the entire technological stack for everything, there is a lot of cop out.
Yes, but
DevOps,
but it's all still backwards compatible to some degree. I could create a website that just used HTML 1.0 and it could still be displayed. It's people that choose to make things fancier or make things more bloated. Again, I don't know if you can regulate that with technology. This is the issue that I'm getting at. We're all talking about the problems of society, but the crypto industry thinks they can solve these problems technologically, and I'm trying to suggest there's not a tech solution. It's a social policy solution. All this bad information on the internet, nobody can agree on what's right. You can't write a computer program that's going to determine truth. It's going to have to be policy. So I'm just trying to figure out where, if you've gotten to that point yet, where instead of just complaining that everything is fucked, you've actually started to look pragmatically at whether or not there are solutions. Because one of the things I saw in your diatribe was you were all too happy or willing to talk about how messed up everything is in the crypto industry. But have you put two and two together to acknowledge that the whole concept that crypto is based on, which is that we can create, that code can solve this problem. I think it's time, this is what I've advocated, I think it's time for us to acknowledge that that's failed. I'm not saying I know what the solution is, but I do think that humans regulating each other has accomplished a lot more than humans creating some kind of standard set of commandments that have to be followed like computer code. I don't know. I'm not convinced that has elevated society. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it hasn't. All it's done is make it easier to create scams, right? Like, but at the end of the day, you're right. It is a social problem, right? And I don't want to seem too left wing because I'm actually not. It's just the moment you open up about this stuff, you get called a communist because of kind of like the shift that's happened in, I guess, the political consciousness of the crypto community. Like the Occupy movement got snuffed out. It got snuffed out, right? It got psyoped and destroyed. And
now let's address. I actually brought that up in my last podcast, I believe, about the Occupy movement. But it wasn't snuffed out by special interests. It seemed as much as the people just got bored and they gave up. You know, I mean,
yeah.
If this, this is the problem that I see with everybody that's frustrated with the current situation. They're looking for some kind of automated solution. Either let me pick the right leader and he's going to fix everything, or let me run the right code and it's going to fix everything. And maybe this is just something that us old fucks have come to realize is an illusion, is that complex problems that have manifested over a period of decades oftentimes take complex solutions over another period of decades to undo. And we're too jaded growing up in this 21st century high-tech world where all of the devices feed us instant gratification in various little forms. We expect everything to be instantly provided to us. We can play a game and we can do the same thing over and over, and the game will sense that and just make us go up a level anyway, just to keep us on board. But in real world, that doesn't happen. You have to pivot and do something different or you never get anywhere.
Yeah, 100% that, because I feel like when people begin to realize something is wrong, they just double down on their delusion. And that might just be because all they can see is the game that they're playing, right? And sometimes they get thrown a bone and they're living off that satisfaction that they've gotten somewhere, even though overall they're kind of miserable or unfulfilled. And I see that a lot with people who work in the space.
Yeah,
kind of the emotional.
In the crypto space, right? Once you jump into the crypto space, you're guaranteed every couple of months for there to be some new narrative that's going to get you excited. That's kind of what the crypto space incubates. Whether that narrative ever manifests into something that truly helps you or humanity is unlikely, but it's going to be there. It's like that instant gratification. If you just sit in one spot, something will pop up and you can loot it.
Yeah, exactly right. I'd say this is, I don't know where to begin, right? I don't know what you'd like me to kind of cover in terms of this, right? But you kind of going back to the whole centralization point. It's literally not only we're talking about LLMs, slop LLMs on AWS, and everyone's trying to create an AI agent, and everyone's trying to create an AI agent that they can create a coin for, right? This is a new narrative. And where are all these agents going to run? They're going to run on AWS, right? Mm-hmm. But even beyond that, you look at all the front ends for dApps, decentralized applications. They're on AWS. Look at all the Ethereum nodes. They're on AWS. I think Solana's probably running on some kind of centralized infrastructure. Most delegated proof of stake chains, the nodes are running on AWS or GCP.
Right. So it's well established that that everything is becoming more centralized and compartmentalized and controlled by private special interests, and obviously the crypto industry is not immune to that either. So I assume it's safe to say you don't like that any more than any of us like the fact that this decentralized concept is becoming more centralized every day. The question is, what do you do about it? What can you do about it? Is there actually a technological solution to that? That's what I'm arguing. I don't think there is. I think it's a policy issue. It's a good example is the concept of libertarianism that that drives a lot of the ideology of the crypto bros is that just leave me alone and let me be free and I can create something that will flourish. It sounds great in theory, but whenever they try to do this, they run into problems. I'm sure you've heard about the USS Satoshi, the ship, or there was a Costa Rican project. There was a project off the coast of England, the Sealand thing. There was Crypto City or whatever it was, Crypto Land. They were all going to create this libertarian utopia, and then they ran into their neighbors, which didn't want them doing something that was going to be destructive to other people around them, and the whole thing fell apart.
Yeah.
The solution to that is not technological, right? The solution to that is policy. The solution to that is government and regulation and saying, okay, we're going to have standardized trash pickup for the community to make the whole community safer. And it seems like it's like crypto bros are speed running the whole concept of society without paying any attention to history. They're eventually going to come back around to realize, hey, maybe we did need that centralized authority that we thought we were supposed to get away from.
Yeah.
The concept of this libertarian utopia it only seems like it could ever last if it turned into some kind of dictatorship or fascist entity or what they might argue is a benevolent, dictatorship from their perspective. But the point is
this is actually like I'm ready to make an argument.
How can technology address that? It just can't.
Okay, so
do you acknowledge that, or do you still think that there's a computer program that can suddenly make a libertarian utopia?
Not a computer program, but computer programs are useful in this, right? Like adding technology, like access to technology and the democratization of technology is kind of like key to any kind of I guess liberation of humanity from oligarchy, right? Which it seems to be like no matter what happens, it's like humanity returns like a serfdom type situation, which is something that upsets me, right?
So
how I go into crypto.
You've rejected the crypto industry. You really think that they're not going anywhere. I'm just wondering if you've put two and two together to realize that part of what drives them is this idea that there is this libertarian utopia that they can achieve without central authorities and governments. And I cannot find any evidence in the sum total of all human history that that's possible.
I think it's like a combination of let's say you're a crypto bro, right? It's kind of like two competing ideas which have taken over your mind, right? One is the idea the government is the problem, which the government is because the government is funded and you benefited by, and the people that are in government obviously get money from lobbyists.
But I think that's one of the false myths, is that government is the problem. Government can be good if it's full of good people. It can be bad if it's full of bad people. But if you don't have government, you have anarchy and chaos. You have people killing each other because they don't like the way they looked at them. You have people beating and raping and taking other people's property. Without government, you have no safe society. You have to have some kind of organized thing.
I agree with you. But I'm just trying to give you the whole
I believe me, we understand how irrational, and we understand all of the concepts that crypto bros dwell on. What I'm trying to find out is whether or not you spent a lot of time thinking about how wrong they are, but have you spent any time about thinking about the problems that they're trying to solve and if there's a better way of doing it?
Yeah, well, there is, right? So, without sounding like a communist, right? The number one problem kind of stems with the unhealthy side of competition and everyone's desire to make tons of money, right? Capitalism is great, but it was a lot better when the CEO was not making 1,000 times more than the average employee.
Right.
It was honestly, CEO can earn 10 times more than the average employee, and that's fine.
And I'm in complete agreement with you. I mean, there's many of us that think that billionaires shouldn't exist, and that's a sign of a broken society, that anybody could have that much disproportionate wealth over the community that helps them get that wealth. The question is,
Yeah,
is there a way to stop that from happening? And I would say absolutely there is a way, and we've got plenty of history of demonstrating it. And the one entity that is possible that has the ability to change those things is government. So if you have a good government that has policies that curtails rampant exploitation of people and taxes people that make that much more, then I think you have that, which, if you look back in times where some of these people would say were the better times, that's what you found is higher marginal tax rates for the ultra rich. But for some reason, that's not a narrative that anybody's willing to entertain anymore, probably because the ultra rich control the media. So we're stuck in a vicious cycle, right?
Also that, and anyone who's smart enough to realize the problem is also smart enough in many cases to increase their wealth to the point where they benefit from low taxes, right? I feel like this is like a thing. And the moment that, you're in the position where you realize it's wrong, you stand to lose from correcting what has happened. And that's why a lot of people that started out as freedom fighters have turned into the system.
Right. So do you have any messages for people that are that are where you were, or that are into the crypto scene? Anything you want to, tell them based on your experience?
Yeah, dude, a lot of the times, if you're a dev, you think about how to solve a particular problem or do a particular thing, but have you ever stopped to ask why? Why are you doing this? Why is it that you're doing this? And what are you doing it for? And why is this important? And do you get what you're doing? Right. And if it's just that you're doing this because it gets you paid and you don't even care about your job anymore, you just like getting paid and you don't care that everyone around you is toxic because of the Twitter algorithm, the X algorithm, and because of all the pressure of volatile prices, then keep working in the space. But if you want to do something meaningful to your life, you have to maybe figure out how you can leave the space and can't proceed to do that, right? A lot of smart people in the space are being held back by the fact that they're stuck here, right? And oftentimes because they might not have experience, they might not be university graduates, they might have dropped out, they don't really have what it takes to leave, but you do have what it takes to leave. You just need to fucking make a new GitHub account and start afresh. As a dev, it's not that hard, but you have to think do you want to keep doing this shit for the rest of your life and just circle jerk on circle jerk, or do you want to do something meaningful? Because in the long term, the drugs, the bitches, making tons of money, spending money, it feels great, but long term you're gonna look back and you're gonna think well, what did I waste my time doing, right? Hopefully you made some good memories outside of that time as well, and hopefully you have some good memories from working in the space, but it gets old.
I think that's a good way to kind of wrap it up. Thanks so much for your time. It's been very interesting. I know we didn't get into too many specifics, but I do appreciate you sharing the information, and let's keep in touch and see where things go from here. And if you have more to add, and people can find your thread on Reddit on the r/buttcoin thing. It's called I've finally left the cult, I think is the name of it.
I've left the cult. Yeah.
I'll put a link to it in the description. And thanks a lot.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for having me on.
Once again, I want to thank everybody for tuning in and listening. And be sure to subscribe to both the YouTube channel as well as our podcasts, which are on all the major platforms: iTunes, Amazon Music, Spotify. Just search for ioRadio, and you should be able to find it. Or you go to the website, ioRadio.org. You'll find links to all of the podcast platforms and everything like that. And be sure to visit the YouTube channel. It's YouTube/American Scream Video. You can find a link to that at our main site, which is ioRadio.org, or the site for my documentary, which is called Blockchain Innovation or Illusion. That's at blockchainii.com. And again, thanks very much for your support. And if you would like to appear on the show, or you want to debate, or you want to discuss anything, email Adam at ioRadio.org.